Welcome to Easy to Love Yoga with Shanna. Today on Strike a Pose, we're going to bring a spotlight to Child's Pose. You'll notice I have a lot of props set up around me because I want to be able to show you lots of different ways that you could use Child Pose and use props to make it more accessible and enjoyable for you to be in this pose. Now the traditional Child's Pose is having the knees and feet together, lowering forward onto your mat, onto your arms, bringing your forehead down, or even bringing your arms behind you with your forehead down. The problem with this is that a lot of people don't have the flexibility to be able to do that comfortably. And also if you're in a larger body, you might not have the room to do that comfortably. So I'm going to go over a couple of different ways that you can make Child's Pose more enjoyable for you. So first I'm going to start by saying that I like to use knee pads if possible in class, and you can buy knee pads that are made specifically for yoga class. Now if you can't find knee pads for yoga, you can also go to your dollar store and buy knee pads that are made for gardening. They will also be very useful in this class. So we're going to take the knee pads and we're going to bring them to the edges of our mat so we'll be able to have our knees nice and wide and our feet together behind us. But to do Child's Pose comfortably, I like to take a block and place it at medium height and another block at a low height right behind it. And I like to use a yoga bolster. Now whether you have a round bolster or a rectangular bolster doesn't really matter. You're just going to place the top of the bolster near the top block, and then the lower block is going to support that bolster. So when you put pressure on that bolster, it has some nice support from the blocks underneath it. So we're going to bring our knees nice and wide to either side of the bolster. So the bolster is going to be very close to the body. Now you can have an extra blanket rolled up that you can place on your heels, under your glutes, so when you come back into Child's Pose, it feels a little bit more supported and comfortable. We're just going to walk our hands down either side of the bolster, allowing the torso to rest on the bolster. Bring your glutes down close to your heels if you can. And now you can bring your forearms down to the ground as you rest your cheek on the bolster. Or you can wrap your hands around the front of the blocks. So this is a traditional Child's Pose. We have our knees nice and wide. We have some cushioning under our knees to keep this comfortable, especially if you have sensitive knees. We have a rolled blanket underneath our glutes on top of our heels to help make this feel a little bit more supported. Traditionally, you would hold this pose for up to 5 minutes on the one cheek, and then simply lift the head and bring the other cheek to the bolster and hold for another 5 minutes. So I'm just going to demonstrate a couple more ways that you can make Child's Pose on the floor feel comfortable. So slowly coming up, removing that blanket from my heels and coming off of my yoga knee pads. Now not everyone's going to be able to find those knee pads, so if you can't find knee pads, that's okay, you can use a blanket. So just take a blanket and just scrunch it up on either side of your bolster or your couch cushion. Now remember, if you don't have a blanket, that's okay. You can have a couple of towels and do the same exact thing. So once again, we're just going to bring our knees wide on either side of the bolster or the cushion that you have. Your toes are together behind you. Again, if you like to have that cushion underneath, you can just drop that cushion onto your heels. Lower the glutes towards the heels, walk your hands forward, slowly lower down onto the bolster, and then you can bring your forearms to the ground if that's comfortable as you rest your cheek on the bolster, or you can wrap your hands around the front of the block, whatever you find is the most comfortable pose for you here. The idea is to have full support in this pose so you can enjoy the sensation of resting. So Child's Pose is a beautiful forward bend. It targets your spine, your hips, your knees, your ankles, and your shoulders. I'm going to slowly come out of this pose, removing the blanket from my heels. And I'm going to take this bolster and I'm going to set it aside. So what happens if you don't have a bolster available and you don't have a suitable cushion? Well, that's where you can use a couple of blankets. Now, if you don't have yoga blocks, you can have a couple of thick books of the same height. You can place your two blankets on top of your books or your yoga blocks. Once again, if you use knee pads from the garden center, you can bring those to the edges. If you don't have knee pads available and your knees aren't particularly sensitive, that's great. If you have an issue with your knees and you have an extra yoga mat, you can fold it over and just bring it so the yoga mat comes right up. You've got that little bit of extra cushion, and now we can go nice and wide with the knees. Bring those feet together behind us, lower back, and then slowly lower the torso down onto your blankets. Now, you're going to find that this pose allows you to go a little bit deeper. It's not quite as supportive as using the yoga bolster on blocks. But then again, you could just change the position of your books or add extra books to bring that little bit of extra height there. And once again, find what makes you comfortable, whether it's having the blanket on your heels under your glutes, having your arms, your forearms down on the ground, wrapping your hands around your books or your blocks. Whatever works for you is exactly what you need for today. So slowly coming out of this pose. Now I have one more pose I'd like to demonstrate for you today, and that's using 2 chairs. Now again, this pose does use a lot of props. So we're going to have 2 chairs very close to each other. Now on the first chair, I have 2 yoga blocks that are one in front of the other. You could also use 2 stacked books. I have just something that's non-slip to prevent my bolster from slipping off of my chair. So I'm going to place my bolster on the non-slip item, and I'm just going to have my bolster pressing against the back of the chair and the yoga blocks or books that you might be using. So when you press down on it, it stays nice and firm. So I'm going to hinge at the hips. I'm going to slowly bring my torso forward to the bolster. Bring my hands onto the chair, resting my forearms onto the chair, allowing my hands to either just hold onto the edges of the chair or wrap around that yoga block or set of books that you have there. And just relax here, allowing the hips to relax, the low back to relax, and just settling into this pose. And remembering you can hold this pose for up to 5 minutes before you gently lift your head, turn the opposite cheek onto the bolster. And just remember, you can use a timer for this, or you can count the number of breaths that you have on one side and repeat the same number of breaths on the opposite side. So find what works best for you today, and I hope you enjoy your child's pose. And remember, it really is easy to love yoga. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.